everyone, this is Veronica Brown, tax advisor and CPA. For this video, guess what? Travel expenses. Welcome to the travel expense series. And we want to go ahead and take a look at travel expenses because a lot of you guys may be a little conservative about your traveling over the past year and a half with COVID and all, or you may have put off some trips and so forth. And with the holidays coming up and people trying to get those last minute business deduction, traveling is one of those deductions that you can take advantage of. So normally when you go on a business trip and you spend all your time on business, say for instance, you go from Atlanta to New York or to California and you work your butt off, you're doing business, you get back on the flight and you come back and you're tired as heck. Those trips, I'm not so concerned about those 100% all business trip. What I want to look at are those trips where you get to have some fun, you get to relax, you get to do a lot of traveling. How do you get those trips deducted if you combine a little business with them? Normally, when you want to look at this trip and ask, can I deduct this? Can I deduct that? Well, these are some of the rules that I'm going to share with you so that you can make some of those trips that you're doing also some personal activities so that you can make those trips deductible as well. One of the things that I super hate about travel expenses is that the Congress, the IRS, they make it so complicated. Oh my God, there's no reason for it to be so complicated. So write your person, write your senator, your member of Congress, write your senator, send everyone you know a note because they need to make these travel rules a bit more simple. Seriously, they need to be a bit more simple. And also travel expenses are an easy audit for business owners. And it's because the rules are so complex. No one knows what they're doing. No one knows what documentation they're supposed to keep. No one knows what qualifies for a business, what rules they need to meet if they're going to travel within the United States. Are they going to travel for business to an international location? How many days and things like that? It just gets a bit complicated. So hopefully I'm able to clear up some of those for you so that you can get some of those personal and business trips fully deductible and stay compliant. When we talk about travel expenses, there are two set of rules that you have to be aware of. There are a set of rules that basically cover how much of your transportation cost that you can deduct. And this is the cost that gets you on a flight from where you're staying to your destination, or if you're traveling by taxi, Uber, car, train, whatever it is. So there's a set of rules that cover that part, and we call that transportation cost. And there are a next set of rules actually that cover your business day expense, they call it. So these are the expenses for meals, activity, and lodging and things like that. So those get covered under your business day expenses. For this particular video, we're going to focus on how to get the transportation costs. So this is your plane ticket. This is your taxi to your hotel or your Uber to your hotel, whatever you do, your train. It doesn't matter, as it would be covered under your transportation cost because it's a cost that you basically take, to the airport, back and forth to the airport, to your hotel and things like that. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. I will also post the next video on your travel day expenses that covers your lodging and so forth. So what are the rules that covers your transportation costs? So the first thing we're going to cover is your transportation costs for trips within the United States. So when we talk about trips within the United States, we're only talking about the 50 states. This does not include any U.S. possessions or U.S. territories. So only within the United States, 50 states. So if you're taking a trip from, let's say, New York to Los Angeles, LA, if you're going on that trip and say, for instance, you have some personal things to get done, plus you have some business trip, once you're traveling within the United States, for you to get your entire cost deductible, then you have to spend 50% of that time doing business activity. And that's for trips that's only in the United States. So that trip that I talked about from New York to LA, as long as you spend about 51% on business and the rest of the time on personal, then those costs will be fully deductible as business expenses, and that's the only requirement that you have to meet. When we look at trips to international location, there are two different set of rules that covers that. I told you that it was a bit complicated, that I even have to get my notes when it comes to travel expenses. So for international location, you will hear that your transportation cost is deductible. So we look at, is the trip 7 days or less, or is the trip more than 7 days, say 10 days or more? And based on the number of days, that's what determine how much time you will have to spend on business to get the entire cost deductible versus how much time you can spend on business versus personal. So for your international trips, the first thing you want to think about is the 7-day rule. If you're going to spend 7 days or less, then this will fall under the 7-day rule, and you're going to like this one. Say, for example, you travel from anywhere in the US to, say, the Virgin Islands or something like that, or whatever your favorite international location is. You only have to spend 1 day on business activities, and you will get the entire trip would be considered a business trip. So if you travel to an international location for 7 days or less, if you spend 1 day doing business, whatever business activity that you're doing for that 1 day, and you spend the other 6 days going to the beach, doing whatever you do when you're vacationing, then that entire trip would be considered a business trip, and you can deduct all of those transportation costs. The second thing that you want to look at for your international trip is, are you spending 10 days or more? If you're spending 10 days or more, then 75% of your time will have to be spent on business. So you do see that just a few days changes the amount of time that you have to spend on business versus personal in order to get all of those transportation costs deductible. You're going to spend 10 days of international location, then 75% of your time has to be spent doing business. So when we look at a trip, if you want to spend the least amount of business and the rest of the time enjoying the beach or sightseeing or something like that, then the 7-day rule is basically the optimal choice, just because you only have to spend 1 day on business and the rest of the 6 days. And this also does not include your departure date. So the date that you're spent traveling, it does not include this day. So it's once you arrive in your international location, then the 7-day rule is by far the best option when you're looking at what rules and how many days you need to spend at your international location if you want to make those personal days deductible as well. And if you're spending more than 7 days, say for some reason you want to spend way more than 1 day, then in order to get those those costs deductible, then you will have to spend 75% of the time on business. So the takeaway from this video is, when you're traveling within the US, there's a set of rules that basically covers US trip, and you have to spend, when you're traveling within the US, you have to spend 50% of the time on business, and you'll get your entire transportation cost deductible. If you're traveling overseas, there are two set of rules. If you're traveling under 7 days or less, then you only have to spend 1 day doing business to get those transportation costs deductible. If you're traveling more than 10 days, then you have to spend 75% of that time on business in order to get those costs deductible. In my next video, I'm going to do a post about how to get the lodging and the meals and expenses like you have to spend on a daily basis while you're on the road and away from your home, how to get those also deductible if they also include some personal expenses. Hope this helped, and enjoy your holiday trips and the rest of your trip that you're going to also make deductible. Have a good evening.